All right, we are back. Thank you very much, Chanel. Going to be a big night out there, and Myra Flores also. We do have a reporter over there that we're going to check in with when they are up and ready. So let's move on here now to District 28. This is Cuellar's district, and we saw earlier in some of our reporting that the National Party hasn't really supported Furman, his opponent. It looks from all indications like Cuellar is going to win again. Now, is that surprising considering the legal trouble that he's had?
I don't think it's surprising at all. I mean, he's a known quantity in his district, as many of us who follow politics have heard. In one aspect or another, all politics is local, and so I think he certainly knows how to bring home the federal dollars into his district. And so for those who are following the tangible results of him being in office, I think there's a solid argument for continuing to vote for him. Now, he's under indictment, so I'm certain that there's some people that will not vote for him because of that. But as both Vicente Gonzalez and Mayra Flores said during that 34 debate, hey, he still is entitled to his day in court. He hasn't been convicted of anything yet. He's been indicted. He's under investigation. Recently, or maybe not so recently, but Menendez in New Jersey was convicted. He's not in office anymore, but I think both those Congressional District 34 candidates wisely said, we have to afford the individual his day in court before we cast any aspersion or judgment on whether or not he ought to resign, or if he's a lame duck or things like that. So and keep in mind, we don't have the same kind of information that these political professionals that are making decisions about where to allocate resources and which races are going to get which kind of money. So if you compare the national Republican support for Mayra Flores versus Jay Furman, who's running against Cuellar, like you said, he's not getting that kind of traction with the decision makers and the people that are deciding who gets what as far as where the money goes.
Right. And now, is there something to be said for I would think that Henry Cuellar would be considered more of a centrist to a conservative Democrat. Is there something to be said for people wanting to vote Republican if they've got what might be described as Republican light, when they had that option, in the same way that some candidates on the left might sort of track to the center or adopt more conservative positions where they may not be able to peel off Republican voters?
I mean, we're always trying to figure out what is going to inform the voting calculus of people who are going to turn out and vote. What's going to make them? Is something going to change their mind? But that's largely an academic argument, because
pretty much,
most Americans just don't pay much attention to politics. Part of the reason is because they're not in my class 2 days a week where I yell at them, telling them how important it is to vote, and how important it. But it doesn't mean they're bad, of course. It just means that they're not as engaged as many of us who are constantly following what's going on in politics. And so no real surprise that the National Republican Party didn't come in with a checkbook and start writing big checks for Jay Furman, and no surprise that Mayra Flores is getting the kind of support, I think, because she's already an alum of Congress, right? She was only in there for a few months, but that still goes a long way to understanding how the institution works, how you build coalitions, how you build allies across, whether it's across the aisle or only on your side of the aisle. You got to do both as a member of Congress.
Most definitely. And I think you also have to remember that Cuellar is to the right of the National Democratic Party in a district that is very conservative. I mean, this is a district that elected a district attorney that tried to go after a woman for a self-induced abortion, claiming that she had violated the law, even though there aren't any criminal penalties for that sort of thing. I mean, this is just a very conservative district, and they do like Cuellar, and they like his conservatism. So, I mean, indictment or no indictment, I mean, when you have a presidential candidate that's under multiple indictments and has a good chance at winning this election, congresspersons that people pay less attention to, as long as they're doing their job in the eyes of the voters in the district, why not keep voting for him?
And just a quick correction, he's convicted.
He did get convicted.
I mean, he's convicted. He's been convicted on 34 felony counts.
Oh, you're talking about
Trump, right?
Trump. Sorry, I was referring more to the Florida and the Georgia cases, but you're correct. He got convicted.
He's still under indictment. He's got other criminal cases pending.
Yeah,
sure.
Let's move on to our next race that we want to focus on, which is the Cameron County Sheriff's race. And wondering if you had any thoughts about this. We have Manny Trevino and Jimmy Manrique going for that. And again, I don't know if this is just things are sort of grandfathered in as Democratic. We're still in that kind of heavily Democratic area, but I feel like we've had a Democratic sheriff for a long time.
I mean, I don't see any surprises in this race coming down the pike. People, and one thing that's interesting that I always bring up to my students when I'm talking about politics, particularly in the Valley, not necessarily in just all of Texas, but here in the Valley, and for those of you that are watching from other places, lawn signs tend to have people's pictures on them. This is unusual. I mean, for those of us in the Valley, that's common, right? Everybody expects to see that, but it's unusual. Number one, those signs cost a lot of money. To get an actual
especially when you
picture
put
on
a poster on,
yeah. So, what does that? Is there a larger? Does that mean something bigger? I don't know if it means something bigger, but sometimes people just get used to seeing the same person in the office, and they associate the name with the picture, and there's my sheriff. They don't even necessarily look at party necessarily when it comes to offices like that, but. And again, no community, no individual is a monolith, no group is a monolith.
True.
So but I would be surprised if there was some kind of upset here and got rid of the incumbent sheriff in Cameron County.
Just to be clear, now there is an incumbent. Manny Trevino did defeat Eric Garza in the primary, so we are going to have a new sheriff here in Cameron County. New sheriff in town. All right, so and I've actually let me just kind of back up a little bit because you're talking about people seeing that picture, seeing that face, and saying that is my sheriff, and then also if people in a district are saying, you know what, things should be going well, is that maybe the power of incumbency?
Sure, the power of incumbency is there's really no way to there's plenty of ways to overcome it.
It's just difficult.
It's very difficult, and it takes a lot of people power.
And it's especially true when you have low information elections. I mean, people can find plenty of information about the presidential election. They can find plenty of info about most U.S. House and Senate races, even state House and Senate races. But when it comes to even sheriffs, to say nothing of like school board races, justices of the peace, etc., there's just not a whole lot of information out there. So an incumbent, though, has name recognition. And that can be like, well, okay, I recognize the name. Everything seems to be going well in my district. So, okay, I'll give this person my vote. Especially if they don't know anything else about them.
Let's go now let's swing back up here to the top of the ticket real quick. And we do see some movement here on the presidential race. I guess no surprises. I guess at this point, looks like Indiana's going to go for President Trump. South Carolina going for President Trump. West Virginia again going for President Trump. So things are kind of going according to plan. I guess is
so far, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if there's one interesting factor on the map as it is right now is that apparently they've called Florida for Trump already. Not necessarily a surprise. He lives there.
But it's happening this early in the night.
It does seem kind of early to me, but...
And for me, the only two real big surprises so far are, number one, albeit with only a small portion of the votes counted. Harris has the lead in North Carolina. I thought that was a state that she might be able to pick up, but I had more money on that happening with Georgia. And right now, again, with still a lot of votes to be counted, Harris is losing, and she's losing right now by a pretty significant margin. I mean, she's made up some ground as more precincts have come in, but so far it's not looking good for her in Georgia, even though it's looking pretty good for her so far in North Carolina.
I mean, just quickly on Florida again, they've already got 92% of their votes counted. And the
I'm
polls
kind of
just
curious how they did
closed.
that. That's amazing.
The polls just closed, so that they must be doing something right in Florida if they're able to count all those ballots so quickly. That's really fast. 92% in. I mean, even in states that were called earlier, right? Vermont, which was called really early for both Harris and Bernie Sanders.
Heck, Maryland, they called that for Harris, and they have 0% of the precincts reporting. How do you even do that?
They still only show 38% of the votes in Vermont, but they declared that for Harris. And I mean, just for Florida, I mean, they're a big state. They're a very populated state. There's lots of geography there, lots of miles to cover, and that they got 92% of the vote in already. That I'm impressed. I have to say, I'm impressed with what they're doing in Florida.
I guess we got a graphic that our director has just handed me. We're gonna take a look at some numbers here. Right now, this is I believe this is the national numbers.
Yeah.
So we've got 55-44 with 2% in. Again, I mean, you couldn't be almost more early days in the county, especially since half the country's polls haven't even closed yet.
Right.
Now, can you? I know that in 2020, particularly in 2020, Republican strategy, former President Trump's strategy was don't vote early, don't vote by mail, go on election day, and that created some mirages, we'll say, that sometimes, depending on the state, they'll count this block of votes first or this block of votes first. And so can you kind of tell me about how you think the early voting numbers might indicate something as far as, or if they can indicate something as far as who might be getting their ground game out early for that early voting? Because that strategy of only vote on election day, they have acknowledged that was not a great strategy and have shifted course since then.
Yeah, and I mean, the long-held historical narrative is that Democratic voters tend to vote early and Republicans tend to vote on Election Day, but there may be some evidence that Republicans took the lesson of 2020 when they actively discouraged early voting and lost a lot of ground that they couldn't make up for, not for lack of trying. So I think this time Republicans are trying to get their ground game. So far, it's paying off. But again, 2%, you can't really, as much as we wanted, I mean, yeah, fine. AP wants to call races with 0% of the precincts. But 2% when you're looking at the national thing, probably not so much to draw any kind of conclusions right now.
No, certainly not. And you mentioned the efforts, the ground game of the Trump campaign. And one thing that I think we've seen being reported in multiple outlets is that Trump wasn't investing a lot of money in his ground game. He wasn't opening as many offices as the Harris campaign was. So maybe moving to encouraging more people to vote early, vote by mail, was because they didn't have the get out the vote ground game that they really wanted. I don't know. I mean, a lot of the money that he's been collecting has been going towards legal fees and things like that. So,
but he has been getting a lot of help from the Republican National Committee and its various subsidiaries, state groups, super PACs, and so forth. Even if the Trump campaign is not spending its own money like most people would say you should, it's not like he's hurting for volunteers and people to get on the ground and try to get out the the vote.
Yeah.
And we've got some numbers now from the Texas Senate race that we're going to take a look at. This obviously Colin Allred and Texas Cruz, and now we've got 11% in, and you got Colin Allred up by 6 points. Kind of first thoughts about this.
Again, it's still 11%, and especially without being able to look at the map of which areas have been counted so far. I mean, is it areas that we all thought were going to go Democrat, areas that were a toss-up, stuff like that? I mean, certainly Allred is got to be pleased with the early results, but 11% is far from, and 6 points up, is far from a moment that you need to start popping the champagne bottle, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right, but is it, again, we kind of touched on this a little bit. I want to say that last time Cruz ran, it won by 3 points. Are you expecting it's going to be sort of that kind of margin of error victory here?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good prediction. You know, one of the things that I appreciated when he ran against Beto in 2018 was Beto's proclamation that Texas really isn't a red state; it's a non-voting state.
It is,
and I think we see a lot of that. I mean, in 2020, out of the 50 states in the District of Columbia, Texas was dead last.
And that was in 2020. I mean, or 2018. This year, early voting was down by 8% statewide, particularly in urban areas.
Yeah. So I think, what does that mean? It means that the people that are very motivated to vote are out there voting, and they're the ones that have the power.
And we've also got, I believe we've got some numbers on Texas 15 as well. This is going to be Monica Daly. That is only 10% in. Obviously, only not too many, but that is a sizable advantage.
Yeah, that's definitely, even with only 10% in, that's definitely going to be a much harder road for Vallejo to make up than for Cruz to make up against Allred.
Is that? Do you think maybe De La Cruz was able to sort of drive up her numbers maybe out of the population centers that is particularly Hidalgo County?
Most definitely. Just anecdotally, driving through the far northern end of District 15, particularly Three Rivers and George West, I couldn't tell you how many, in addition to Trump-Vance signs, how many De La Cruz signs I saw. It was a lot, and I think De La Cruz knows that as long as she can eat enough into the Democratic strongholds here in Hidalgo County and, in Hidalgo County, then all she's really got to do is make sure that people in the much more reliably conservative northern end show up on Election Day. And I think that, so far, that's bearing fruit. Again, 10%. Can't pop the champagne bottles yet, but, if I'm De La Cruz, I feel a lot more secure about her win than Allred feels about the Senate race.
And Daniel just told me we have some numbers now, some early numbers from District 28 coming in, and also a very sizable lead, but and also something that would not be. This would be sort of the inverse of the De La Cruz Vallejo, where you think that Vallejo favored in this race and is up big. Jay Furman, we were just talking about, not a lot of national support, and 16% of the vote in, doing very, very well so far.
I mean, that's certainly encouraging for Jay Furman, who's a veteran. He's got a good story, and a lot of his campaign pictures had him in the cowboy hat, right? I mean, the ones that I've seen of him, the cowboy hat.
Did.
So I mean, you can't go wrong.
Which makes sense in that district.
You can't go
rural
wrong.
as it is.
But like you were saying, the pictures on the signs, you do see a lot of cowboy hats for a lot of candidates.
Definitely.
Yep.
All right, so one of the other things that we wanted to talk about, just touch on here real briefly, was the propositions in McAllen. Propositions A, Proposition B. A, I believe, is the limiting the contributions to $500 per an individual. I believe it's more for the mayor. I don't have that in front of me, but it is more for mayoral candidates. So, what do you think? Is this power to the people? Is this trying to take the voice away from the moneyed class, or is this maybe interference?
Well, I don't think it's interference. I mean, any chance you get to give voters a little bit more of a say and get people that are willing to write big checks to play a lesser role, I think that makes it more representative. I think these are good small d democracy initiatives by capping the amounts that those local candidates can get. And, I didn't even realize it until yesterday. I had a student in my office. We looked it up. The mayor of McAllen is a part-time gig, and he gets $1,200 a year. I mean, so it's not like he's trying to figure out a way to pull in a lot more money because of he doesn't make much. I mean, he's a businessman, Mayor Villalobos. But the B, I think, is probably the more interesting one because it's going to provide initiative and referendum for citizens in McAllen to be able to put things on the ballot
And give them
vote
recall
on.
power as well.
And what's that?
And give them recall power
Yes,
as well.
and so initiative, referendum, and recall. I think that every community should have those initiatives. I think that occasionally it has been misused. I know there's been instances in California where big moneyed interest groups come in and pay people to canvass and get signatures on petitions.
And then turn the recall into a complete circus.
Yeah, we recall the Schwarzenegger election back in.
Where they have like 98 people on the ballot.
Man, they had like
everyone got
a dozen
got a crack.
people in the gubernatorial debate, and it was my gosh, that was politics at its best.
I think they actually had a couple of adult film actors that were on the ballot too, and split that vote, such as it is.
Yep.
It was a free for all on that one.
See, folks, politics can be fun. Sometimes sometimes it can be fun.
Sure.
Circling back around to A real quick, one of the ideas that I've heard was you take away that individual contribution, all of a sudden you've got pooling money, PACs as it were, and now you that's the way to get around that.
There's always a way around.
And in fact, I was going to say that with the part-time and minuscule salary, I mean, I know this is not going to play well with anyone out there, but honestly, if you want to get rid of the good old boys system, the perception at least of corruption in so much of Valley politics, you actually have to make these positions full-time, and you have to start paying these people, the mayors, the city council members, real salaries. Because when you keep them that low, yeah, I get it. No one wants career politicians. This is supposed to be a civic duty, not a way to make money, blah, blah, blah. But when it's that low and it's part-time, that leaves people susceptible to special interests. If not outright corruption, then certainly undue influence by special interests who can come and be like, hey, man, you support this, I'm going to give you X amount of money. Now, this proposition on the ballot may help alleviate some of that, but it's not going to get. The bigger issue remains that if you don't pay people enough, then instead of getting the most able, you're going to get the most willing. That's no shade at the mayor of McAllen, who I think has done an excellent job. I'm speaking generally here. But honestly, the way to end some of the corruption in Valley politics may actually be to do the thing people don't want to do, which is, have full-time politicians that make money and pay them a bunch of money. Couldn't hurt.
Sure.
One of the races that we just I won't say that I skipped over was the state senate race, La Mantilla and Adam Hinojosa, and I was wondering if this is something that, again, I believe Morgan La Mantilla is the favorite in this one. She has got, and we were just talking about funding and paying for elections. she's got some support from the national committee, but so did Hinojosa. He got some support, I believe. The governor was just down here stumping for him. So what does it say that they're trying to, that they think that this might be a pickup in their internal polling? They think this is something that they can get.
Well, they want to be competitive. I think, that district includes a little bit of Corpus, too, doesn't it?
Yes.
So, they're trying to, they've identified the race as something that they want to put resources into, give them a better chance of having a positive result. They're not going to win every strategic decision that they make as far as where they put the money in. But, she's got a pretty broad-based support as well. So she's the incumbent, right?
She is the incumbent.
She's the incumbent. I don't think, again, irrespective of the statewide support or the governor coming down, I'm not sure that that's going to really influence people one way or the other.
I mean, it's a more high-profile down-ballot race, but it's still lower information than congressional seats and so forth. I think La Mantilla has the advantage of she has run as a moderate, very centrist, hyping up her problem-solving and her willingness to reach across the aisle. I haven't seen Hinojosa really do that, or at least the few ads I've seen of his, and admittedly, being out of his district, I haven't seen a whole lot. But by and large, he's hyped up. I think his conservative credentials, La Mantilla has tried to hype herself up more as a centrist, and that appeals to a lot of Valley voters. So, but again, Hispanics are supposedly moving away from the Democratic Party. Hinojosa certainly had a lot of investment in his campaign from state Republicans, the governor, and so forth. So it wouldn't be out of the question for him to take this seat. Certainly he will make it. He should make it a very competitive election.
Yeah, she's, I believe, pushing her business bona fides as well.
Yes, that too.
And that was, you had touched on a little bit earlier, and there was something that I wanted to talk about here was the kind of advertising that we're seeing. Economy's top of mind, immigration top of mind for a lot of people here, Texas, across the country. But you had talked about earlier about the kind of anti-trans ads, and you see that in a lot of the local races, the smaller down ballot races. And I'm wondering what was kind of the calculus you think that they said, well, you know what, this is where we can hit people effectively.
The social conservatism of the Valley, I think. The Valley is a very evangelical and conservative Catholic area. It is a rural area, a lot of it's a rural area. And so the idea is that, especially with a lot of the local Democratic candidates running either on the center or on the right on immigration, which is arguably the biggest issue here in the Valley. They can't be hit on that, so try something that might appeal to the evangelicals, appeal to the social conservatives, and hype up a problem that, and I cannot emphasize this enough, doesn't actually exist. But hey, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Am I right, folks?
Yeah, right. I mean, I was going to say something similar. It's that there are, according to the best estimates anyway, the best social science that we have, there's about 1.4% of people in the country that identify as adults, that identify as trans or binary or non-binary, something like that. I mean, we're talking about a sliver of the American population. That's so much attention has been placed on, let's be frank, demonizing and accusing and casting aspersion on these individuals because they're different. And they're already individuals that suffer from discrimination as they live their lives. And then we're going to heap more on them and tell them that we're going to, make it so that states and the government are going to basically discount your mere existence and suggest that you're some kind of deviant just because you live your life in a different kind of way.
It's a continuation of the bathroom bills that were proposed years ago. oh, people are going to pretend to be transgender and go in the bathroom. Well, statistically, it ain't transgender people that are assaulting children and women in the bathroom. It is non-trans straight men. That's who's doing it. But, we'll go after this group that isn't actually doing anything because, as Dr. Velez said, they're different. They're not like... They not like us. They not like us. It's tragic, honestly, more than anything else. But, never let the truth get in the way of a good story, I suppose.
I will admit I did not have the Kendrick Lamar shout out on my bingo card. I appreciate it. Is this this race evangelicals, very religious, Republicans will say Hispanics, Latinos, there are voters. They just don't know it yet. Mm-hmm. That they're traditionally religious, traditionally traditional. Are we just kind of seeing Hispanics in the area, in the Valley, are they realizing that they actually are Republicans, or do you think maybe these are just some blips?
Oh, gosh, excuse me. I mean, I don't know. I don't think people give it that much thought. Most people, anyway. Yeah. They see a candidate they like. They hear a message that resonates with them. I'm not sure that the label has a lot of meaning necessarily, whether it's, you want to call it, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. I mean, these are terms that we talk about all the time, but I would just say a larger percentage of people don't ascribe the same meaning to those labels that we might. And no race, no group of individuals are a monolith. We know that. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of religious people that are people of faith. They're not all godless communists, but they. There are plenty of people who that have a very strong faith, that their faith informs their vote one way, and then people who have a very strong faith, their faith informs their vote to go another way. This is one of the amazing things about a diverse country with lots of different viewpoints, that we can find that, or at least attempt to find the common ground and solve problems, or at least there are some who are attempting to solve problems, others trying to exploit those problems. Not you, but I mean, some candidates or some parties trying to exploit those problems for let's be real, right? Opportunistic individuals that are just ambitious. They want a title, they want a seat of power, they want to be at the table, and it doesn't. It's almost like the end justifies the means. For many of these individuals. So, we don't care what the campaign, as long as we win. The goal is to win.
And, if people get hurt along the way, who cares?
So be it, right? All's fair in love and war and politics, I guess.
I mean, I would still, though, argue that, though, the Valley does just have a very, very strong history of conservative evangelism and Catholicism. Now, historically, that's also come with a social justice message. That has also come with a belief that you help the poor, you welcome the immigrant, and so forth. And I don't know if that's necessarily going away, even though certainly with debate, it may seem like that at times. With growing Valley support for the border wall, with wanting candidates to take a tougher line on immigration. But that may also be mixing in the conservatism of Valley residents with the fact that the Valley economy has become very, very, has a lot of, lost my train of thought, the border security infrastructure has become very, very powerful down here in the Valley. Border Patrol jobs, other jobs related to that, immigration lawyers, etc., have all come to become a big part of the Valley economy. And when that's the case, you don't want to kill this economic golden goose. It's like in West Virginia. Does coal really have a future as an economically viable entity, coal mining? Nah. But that matters a lot for your identity as a state. That matters a lot for your economy. And when that's all you know, that's what you, I guess, kind of harp on. You know, you stick with what you know. And when you see down here all these Border Patrol jobs showing up, when you see veterans moving down here because they can get jobs in immigration law enforcement, whether with the state or the feds or whoever, you know, if you're a Valley resident and you want to keep money coming into the Valley, if you want to keep unemployment from getting worse, then you support what's providing the jobs. And right now, with agriculture in trouble, Border Security is providing, it's not the provider of jobs in the Valley, but it's certainly not an inconsequential one.
And I think that's really interesting that you mentioned the border wall and the construction of the border wall. Sometimes I think people make a mistake thinking that someone who supports that is making some kind of political statement about immigration. I don't think that's the case at all. In fact, I remember seeing, I think it was a 16-minute piece, investigative piece from one of the major legacy media outlets, I forget, that was talking to people here in the Valley about the border wall. And they said, well, yeah, of course we support the border wall because that means jobs. Mm-hmm. Someone's got to build that thing.
It's kind of like prisons.
Yeah, someone's got to build it. And those people that are building it, they've got to eat. They've got to live somewhere. They've got to, you know, they'll have to gas up their car. They'll have to shop at H-E-B. They'll have to do all these things, and this results in economic activity for the region. So irrespective of what the political implications, what the value implications of it are, and what it means ideologically, hey, more economic activity, that's a net positive. We want that, you know, whatever it might be for.
Yeah, regardless of the metaphorical costs that there may be.
Let's switch gears here a little bit and go right back to the top of the ticket. We've got AP making some calls, and our director here, Daniel's got some information coming out of Georgia, one of those swing states that AP is at this point is definitely leaning red. We'll see what those numbers are. And up in the Northeast, as you might expect, looks like AP has called Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island for Harris. No real surprises there.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. It looks like they called Illinois as well, huh?
Illinois, yeah, not a surprise.
Yeah.
That was going to go blue.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if Illinois goes blue, but Chicago goes blue and Illinois follows.
It's fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, we're gonna just have to take a second on some of those in-depth looks there at the states. Another race that I wanted to talk about was the Janie Lopez race down here, running against Jonathan Gracia, and that's for the Texas State House, and one of the.
And I recently refreshed my page, and there's still 0% for both Janie and Janie Lopez and Jonathan Gracia. I'm not looking at the Associated Press on that. I'm looking at the Texas Secretary of State.
All right. Well, that may be a function of the county having a little bit of difficulty. I believe they put
a little bit of difficulty. God bless us.
Some difficulty.
Bless their hearts.
But yeah, just while Dr. Velez is kind of dealing with the special nature of our Texas Secretary of State's website and county websites. With education, yes, certainly Governor Abbott has made no bones that he wants to put more, well, he has gotten more restrictions placed on what can be taught in K through 12 schools, and now he's moved on to, trying to take that and roll it into education savings account, scholarships to charter and private schools, that kind of thing. Things that play really well in the suburbs of like Dallas, Austin, etc., but a lot of rural areas and even inner urban areas, including the Valley, have largely resisted. And since he failed to persuade sessions of the Texas legislature to budge on that issue, he's trying to flex his own popularity for what can be best described as political revenge. By and large, so far, he's been successful in that. So the question is whether that will affect things in the Valley. Certainly, there are a lot of questions about the quality of education in the Valley, but there are also a lot of questions about whether shifting funding to giving people money to go to private schools or just setting up more charter schools and so forth is really the way to address it. I mean, most of the social science research shows only marginal improvements at most among students that go from traditional public schools to charter schools. For private schools, I can say this as a graduate of a prep school. Yes, mine was really, really good. It was much better than the nightmarishly awful public schools in Memphis, Tennessee. Having said that, I knew a lot of other private schools, and if I had the choice between those private schools and public schools, I would probably have gone to public school because they really just were not better. And I think no matter where you go, you find that there are a whole lot of good private schools. There are also a whole lot of private schools that are just money pits. Yeah. There's no other way to describe it. And you also have the fact that I think a lot of Valley residents, they really, as part of believing in the American dream, they also believe in the value of public education. And I think they also know that with the poverty levels in the Valley, that those scholarships, and we've seen this elsewhere in places like Arizona, the people that are getting those private school vouchers and stuff, they're middle and upper class families. They're not the poor people that voucher proponents claim they're trying to help. Yeah. So, but again, that's on education, though that doesn't, of course, answer the question about the District 37 race.
Right, and then I know that I had interviewed Jonathan Gracia once and said that education was sort of an impetus for getting into the race, and I thought it was interesting that Jenny Lopez has ads up saying, I got this much money for our public education. And so after seeing kind of the education, the fallout from some of those reps that didn't want to go along with the education savings account, particularly ones in rural areas where they just don't have that option. Like you say, in those larger areas, those larger suburbs, you do have the option, and some places in rural areas, it's you have the school.
Well, and I think that's why we saw with the last big push for vouchers that a lot of rural areas were in opposition, despite sharing a party label with the governor, who was a major proponent of this, right? I mean, look, I'm a product of the New York City public schools from 1970s and 80s, I don't mind telling you. We were used to class sizes of 30, 35 students back then, and that today people view that, oh my gosh, that's a huge class, 35. Well, it was common, Did we get the same kind of attention that students in a classroom of 20 get? No, certainly not, but we were still able to provide a good public good to individuals that were able to go on and be successful in higher ed, be successful in professions. And private school, I think it's unfortunate that this has become a private school versus public school thing.
It really is sad.
Because, look, this claim that we want to, that we want choice, we already have choice. You could send your kid to a private school. You could homeschool. You could send them to a public school. You don't have to send them to the public school by your house. In most areas here in the Valley, they can bus to a different one within the district. I think and this is what is unfortunate, especially in those low information elections, that it takes time to explain that, look, if you want to give vouchers to help parents pay for private school, fine. But don't take that money from the public school. because that does weaken the overall quality of the public good for people that just can't not only can't afford private schools, maybe they don't want private schools. Just because they have the option to have a private school doesn't mean everyone's going to jump on that bandwagon, does it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a zero-sum game. I mean, Governor Abbott claims, this education savings account and all of this will still be able to properly fund public schools. Well, not really. Education funding, as with most areas of a budget, are a zero-sum game. If you take money out of one and put it in, if you increase money in one place, inevitably you're going to decrease money in another. It's kind of like your household budget. When you make a household budget every month, if you cut spending, if you increase spending in one place, inevitably you have to cut spending somewhere else, or you're going to go over budget, and nobody wants that. So, it is a zero-sum game, no matter what school choice proponents want to claim about public schools.
Yeah. I think we've got those Georgia graphics up, those Georgia numbers up. We want to go ahead and take a look at some of those. And Georgia, of course, vaguely surprising to go into the Biden camp in 2020, and obviously a big swing state right now. Now it looks like we got Donald Trump up by about 9. Still, again, some of those areas not in yet. I want to say the AP. Yeah, there we go. Is 60 some odd percent called. AP right now saying 66 percent for vote totals in. Is this something that we're just going to have to? Well, actually, you know what? Let's back up here a second, because I know that it's election night. I know that former President Trump, even today, I heard was calling let's find out who wins on election night. And I don't think anybody realistically thinks that we're going to have a clear, definitive, before you go to bed tonight winner.
I think we might.
I think so too.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected.
There's a difference between having a clear winner on election night, according to the AP and stuff, and what happens over the next few months. Certainly, if Harris does have the Electoral College clinched, then the former president has said he will sue in pretty much every battleground state. He's already got a legal team lined up to begin doing that, to begin challenging any results that are not in his favor. So I don't think it's so much that... I think it's more that we won't have a final someone concedes on election night. I think it's going to go on for a while, but I think with the quickness of the way votes are being counted so far and stuff, I think there is the distinct possibility that we will have a someone with 270 called by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think polls don't do what they used to. We used to rely on them a lot more than we do these days, because and not to get too deep into the weeds, but the methodology has been really called into question on how you get a solid sample within for a poll, because with these devices that we carry around, we know whether or not a call is from someone we know or from an unknown caller. And most of the people that I speak with, and again, this is anecdotal, but most of these people I speak with, if they don't know who's calling them, swipe down, I guess.
Yep, that's what I do.
So, whereas, as I was sharing with my students again, I'll date myself a little bit here, but, when you used to have the phone in the house, on the wall, it rang, and you didn't know who it was. The only way you could find out who it was is you had to pick it up and say hello. And if it was someone, sometimes there's always funny comic routines about then saying, "Hi, this is the pizza place," or something like that. If it's someone you didn't want to talk to, or a pollster, or a telemarketer, or whatever. But polling it's going through some things.
Yes.
Polling is going through some things right now, some polls are more reliable than others, and pollsters, bless their hearts, they're trying to figure out fixes for these inherent or systematic biases that they're facing in trying to put together a representative sample. But it is a lot of trial and error. Is this going to give us the most accurate result that we have? So, until we resolve, and I don't know if we can resolve that, polls are still the best way to give us some idea,
a sense of what's happening.
Where people are.
Not a prediction, but a roadmap.
Yeah, I think
that's
that's
a good way
fair.
to look at it. Yeah.
It's more like a fireman's axe as opposed to a scalpel. Is that a good analogy? I don't know.
I have no idea.
I guess that depends.
I should workshop
who's
that. I should workshop that in class a little bit more before I use that in public.
Yeah, I mean, you have a captive audience, so why not, right?
Fair enough.
All right, so the getting to the polling, which has swung wildly. Obviously, it has been an election like no other. Biden's, I don't think you can sugarcoat this terrible debate performance that essentially was the next first step in the road that quickly led him to not seeking re-election. You get a replacement. Even after the Republicans have already had their convention, I mean, we're this close. We're basically a 90-day campaign, and polls, catching up. Now it's an entirely new candidate, and then you've got this momentum. And I don't know if it's look at the shiny new thing that we got. Hey, a new candidate, especially since you had a lot of double haters, a lot of people who, after millions of votes for Biden and Trump, sat around and said, God, who wanted Biden and Trump again?
Yeah.
But here we are. And then after some time, as a rise, Harris, kind of plateaued out, and there's been close. So what is it about the polling that, maybe the question isn't about the polling, what is it about the race that is so close, and that the polls are, you can see, they're dueling polls. Trump campaign will put out something saying, hey, we're +5 in this state. Harris campaign puts out, no, we're +5 in this state. And then you just have a lot of these issues with the polls.
Well, they're also creating, let's be realistic, right? They're also creating two distinct realities. The narratives that have been advanced.
For supporter groups that are already predisposed to competing realities.
Yeah, I mean, what the issues that are covered. I mean, look, people are really influenced by the type of and the media outlets that they consume, and some media outlets are talking about, they're all talking about economy and inflation, but some media outlets are interpreting what they're seeing in today's economy in the worst possible way, despite the fact, inflation and high prices. I was like, well, inflation is a global phenomenon.
It's
really a matter of
every developed country has gone through inflation since the pandemic.
And the United States has actually done better than many of these other first world countries as far as recovering and getting jobs back, the jobs that were lost during the pandemic and such. But according to some, oh my gosh, we're in decline. I mean, the people that attend former President Trump's rallies are hearing, you can't go outside and get a loaf of bread without getting shot. It's so dangerous. You can't, nobody can afford to live. I just saw someone earlier tonight there from a CBS national news interviewed a Trump supporter in Boca Raton, Florida, who said, I don't feel safe letting my daughter go outside. In Boca Raton? Really? I mean, this is a reality being constructed that says, gosh, are we a nation in decline? Are we a third world nation? I mean, this is, and I think it's
It's what happens when all you do basically is stay home and you watch a lot of news, which most news outlets are going to cover crime. I mean, if it bleeds, it leads. That's no disrespect. I get it. I really do. But, but if that's all you do all day, and I think a lot of these people, that's what they do all day, then, yeah, I mean, it's like down here. Thinking that immigration is such a problem. Oh, it's gotten so dangerous to live here. Really, I've lived in Washington, D.C., Birmingham, Memphis, Tennessee, and Knoxville, and I visited places such as Chicago, New York, New Orleans, etc. This is probably the one place I've lived in where if I went running on a public trail at 9:30 at night, I wouldn't feel like I had to look over both shoulders to see if somebody was going to shank and rob me. That's just the reality of living down here. The problem is a lot of people don't see it that way. They digest news and, that focuses so much on crime, and they lose track of what's outside. They trust that more than they do walking the streets, or at least it distorts their view of walking the streets. And again, I keep using the word tragic, but it is kind of a tragedy when you can't see basic reality.
I want to change gears here for a second. We've got some numbers in from District 34, the Vicente Gonzalez Myra Flores, and it's a 0%. Okay, so this must be early voting numbers.
104 votes been counted.
Wow. Early voting numbers in one
has
location.
To be in one precinct.
Has to be one precinct.
That's all that early voted.
But if these trends continue, it's looking good for her.
Maybe Texas ought to call up Florida and say, "Hey, how are you counting all your ballots so quickly?"
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, it looks like they called Texas for Trump already.
That is what it looks like. AP has called Texas for Trump already. Yes.
I mean, Harris, based on the numbers they've got so far, Harris did better in Texas than I thought she would do, given how hard she's gotten hammered on the Biden administration's immigration policies. But, Trump carrying this state is hardly what I would call an upset.
Do you think that says something, especially since it's so early, so quickly, that they've called it for? Do you think that portends something in the Senate race? Maybe there's some down ballot, some coattails?
Well, I'm sure that's what Ted Cruz is hoping for.
Yeah, and he has taken the
like that is at least for now trending in the Democrat Henry Cuellar's favor. But again, 40%. You can't read a lot of tea leaves about that.
True, most definitely.
I mean, you could,
but you'd probably be wrong.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could. You're right. I suppose you could do a lot of things. I wanted to get back to something that we were just talking about, and the idea of how voters get their information. We've got everyone's on social media, and you've got the algorithm basically, and so people tend to maybe be a little siloed off, a little bit in echo chambers. Yeah. How do you kind of get past that if what I Google is different than what you Google, and we're asking the same questions, but we're getting different results, and then that shapes our reality and then shapes what our next result is going to look like as well?
I mean, I think one of the things that education, I hate to,
it is
toot our own horn and drive people to,
it is, though.
This isn't just for job security for Dr. Smith and I. I mean, look, civic education leaves much to be desired. I think it's fair to say. I talk with students about this all the time. And I asked them what kind of civic education they got. And quite frankly, we need to move just beyond learning how the mechanics of government work, but we need also to be teaching the next generation of voters how to properly evaluate and the content that they're consuming. Mm-hmm. We need to teach media literacy. I mean, media and politics is one of the classes I teach. So a quick shout out to UTRGV. Yay! I'll be teaching it in the spring. I love that one. But I think that is a skill that students desperately need. How to be able to look through and get down to be able to pull out from whatever medium they're using, if it's Facebook, if it's TikTok, if it's not Twitter, is that what we're going to call it? X?
I'm calling it Twitter until
Twitter?
it dies. So
I mean, so instead of just relying on what you see in your feed, you have to do a little bit more work. And nobody necessarily likes to hear that message, of course. More work, that's no good. But I think people desperately need training on how to properly interpret what they're seeing in their social media. For so many people, if you ask them, where do you get your news? Oh, Facebook. Where do you get your news? TikTok. Well, you're getting it via TikTok or via Facebook, but it's probably coming from ValleyCentral.com. It's probably coming from PBS or the AP or the New York Times or something.
Or it's coming from your friends. A lot of the news I get comes from my friends that I get on social media now. And the issue with that, though, is, they're your friends, so you want to believe them, but they're not always getting the best information when they post. I mean, we saw this at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So much of that misinformation was getting spread around blindly because people were getting it from their family members, from their friends, people they trusted. And so they think, well, this person, I want to trust them, so I'm going to spread this thing that claims that, COVID vaccines somehow cause autism. Is that true? Absolutely not. But people get it from their friends. They believe it. They spread it, and it just creates this vicious cycle of misinformation, media literacy, pride in America, I think, is something that has to be taught. Not nationalism. That's different. And I think it also needs to be an honest pride. Like, you have to point out the warts of American history, even as you point out the wonderful things about American history. You see the warts, you learn from them, but you also celebrate the good things that America has done, that Texas has done. You instill that sense of balancing pride in being an American with the fact that we are not the exception to history. We are not perfect, and we do need to make changes to avoid the mistakes of the past, but you still need to have that honest but proud view of American history. And I don't know if we really get any of that. Actually, there is no probably about it. We really don't get that anymore, certainly with the curriculum changes, but just period. I think that a lot of people, even if they didn't have the legislature, like looking over their shoulder of, why are you teaching about the Alamo this way or blah, 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 there would still be an issue about people being too scared in the classes in K through 12, even in college, to tackle those tough issues, whether it be about American history, modern American public policy, whatever. And the problem is we've lost the ability to disagree without disrespect. We've lost the ability to not only siphon through nonsense and misinformation, but also to know what stuff really is a life or death matter and what stuff really is just a mountain out of a molehill. Hopefully that made sense.
We talked a little bit earlier, and again, just kind of switching gears. We talked a little bit earlier about polls, and the big one that a lot of the political junkies were very very tuned into was the Seltzer poll from the Des Moines Register, and that showed something that we've seen in a lot of polls throughout this entire election season, as abbreviated as it has been, is the gender divide, where Kamala Harris seems to be doing very well with women. Donald Trump seems to be doing very well with men. And it's been a strategy, it looks like, for Trump to try and turn up that percentage of men, especially young men, who go out and vote for him. And what is kind of the gender gap in the campaign, do you think? What issues or what has that led to? Not led to necessarily, but how is that making itself known, manifesting?
Well, I think one of the big drivers is of the gender gap is the Supreme Court, for the first time in American history, taking rights away through the Dobbs case, and they overturned.
Well, not the first time in American history.
Roe versus Wade. Oh, well, fair enough, right? In modern history, maybe.
Okay, there you go.
But taking rights away from individuals, and these are very personal issues. These are not easy decisions to make. The idea that if you're for reproductive freedom for women to make their own choices, that means you're all about or encouraging people or pro-abortion. So I mean, I don't think I've ever met someone who's pro-abortion. Like, oh, I can't wait to get my next abortion or my first abortion.
Yeah,
it's just not real. That's not reality.
Nope.
These are challenging decisions, and I like what Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz said. He's like, the exam room is too small for the doctor, the patient, and the government to be in there to tell
he's
you,
not wrong
whether
either.
it's women's issues or men's issues for all that matter.
And when he was first elected, he had the mind your own damn business. That seemed
Yeah.
to come that line that he seemed to hit quite a bit.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Andrew, about the gender divide? And is it going to? Are we going to see this coming in 26, in 28? Are we going to see more gender divide rather than other sort of classifications? Is it going to be a qualitative difference?
That's a good question. I think we're already seeing it right now in terms of this election. I mean, all the initial results we have show that women are strongly voting for Harris. I think the most recent I saw was about 55-44. Men, in contrast, are very much going for Trump. And I think it comes back to abortion. I think there's also the added attraction of possibly having the first female president in American history. For black women, is the prospect of having the first black woman in American history. Whereas for men, for a lot of men, particularly young men, particularly those who hang out in what is called the manosphere,
I haven't heard that term yet.
Yeah, I mean, it just is reference to like the Andrew Tates of the world, these I call them shysters, but, no one asked for my view. But basically these people that preach about being an alpha male and, you got to act a certain way and, the trad lifestyle cult thing. Harris's possible ascendancy to the presidency is yet another sign for men that they are losing control in their minds of this country, that they are the rightful leaders, and all of a sudden they're losing their grip. And here comes former President Trump very explicitly running on I'm the president for men. I'm going to emphasize jobs traditionally held by men. I'm going to, or at least my vice president is going to, talk about returning to traditional values and women not necessarily in the workplace all the time, that kind of thing. So for a lot of men, unfortunately, for better or for worse, that is a very appealing message. It's the idea that, all this focus has been on women. All this focus has been on improving women in STEM, women in sports, etc. Well, what about us? Regardless of the fact that men still hold most positions of power in America, there still is a feeling among younger men in particular that they're losing control. They're losing their grip. And this man, Trump, is going to restore masculinity to its quote-unquote rightful place.
All right.
Just real quick, we got some updates, some updated numbers we're going to take a look at. First, let's take a look at President again, with the caveat always that it is that is early in the evening. This is the national number, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, so a national number, we've got 16% in, and surprise, surprise, it looks like it's going to be pretty close.
I mean, that's what all the polls have said. It's going to be close.
Yeah, I think it's more a surprise that Trump is up by as many votes as he is. Again, with only 16% of of all national precincts reporting, I think it's more a surprise that he's up by that much than it is the fact that it's still way too close a race to call.
Yeah. Well, and that's the popular vote too. So.
Yeah, that doesn't matter that may not matter as far as the Electoral College because of the unique nature of American politics.
Right. Yeah.
Unique is a word. Let's take let's take another quick look at the U.S. Senate race and see where we're standing on that one. All right, we've got 57% in, and Ted Cruz has now opened it up to 6 points. And do we have I don't know if we have an image yet of where those votes are coming from, where we're looking at some outstanding votes that might need to be counted, perhaps in the well, it all depends. Traditionally, the smaller, more rural areas will get their votes in quicker than the larger population centers. Let's move on now to District 34 and see if we got an update on that one. This is the Mayra Flores Vicente Gonzalez, and again,
still 0%.
Still 0%, and still from one precinct.
Someone get me Florida on the phone.
Right? I swear.
All right, let's take a quick look then here at race 15, District 15. All right, 12% in here, and again, it did.
Yeah, I mean, still ways to go, but that margin though seems to be holding steady for De La Cruz.
Yeah, even just a few more percentage points in, that is still it doesn't seem like there's a lot of ground being made up there. Let's taking a quick look here at District 28, and we got this is very, very close, even as we get 41% in. All right, so we've got Jay Furman still up by 2 percentage points over in District 28. Does that surprise anybody?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Why not?
I mean, like you were saying earlier, it is a conservative district, and maybe some people are abandoning Cuellar because he's in legal hot water. I don't know.
That's possible. Yeah.
That could certainly, be a factor. It's hard to know. I mean, a lot of this is prognosticating, right? Just thinking
That's
of how we're trying to use our collective knowledge to inform our predictions and our forecast, but it's an imperfect science. It's hard to know for sure what's driving. And keep in mind, your ballot is secret.
Yeah.
Who you vote for is secret. Whether or not you vote is public, but who you vote for is secret. And that's one of those issues that many individuals would prefer to keep to themselves. So it would be even challenging for pollsters to try and pull that apart, even after the fact, and say, what was it that made people vote this way versus the other way? I mean, it's one of the reasons why it's a great time to be a political scientist right now, I'll tell you.
Yeah, albeit a stressful time. I mean, for me, it's still a bit of a surprise. The fact that it's close is not that much of a surprise, but I think the fact that Furman has the lead, again, with fewer than 50% of all precincts, that to me is a little surprising because for all of Cuellar's troubles, and I think Dr. Velez is right, I think there are a lot of people that just want to kick Cuellar out of office because of the corruption, the indictments, and all of that. But at the same time, he's still very much a conservative in a conservative district, and he has the advantage of incumbency, even if in a rural conservative area, having a D next to your name may not be maybe more of a liability.
Do you think there might be some down ballot here of people sort of turning, just maybe rejecting D's outright?
Potentially, maybe.
Yeah.
Again, it's still early. It's hard to know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Texas, if people were that dissatisfied with the Democratic Party, Allred probably shouldn't be as competitive as he's been, and Harris should probably have lost by a lot more in Texas if people were turning that far against the Democratic Party. So, yeah, there's just still a lot we don't know, and, a lot of ballots to still be counted.
And just looking right now real quick at the Associated Press, they've got 62% of the votes in Texas counted. They've already obviously called it for Trump, but up by a good 10 points, 9.5, 10 points, which is, I believe, a little bit more than we saw him beat Joe Biden by. In fact, quite a bit more if I'm remembering that correctly. So, but again,
yeah, I was basing that off of the previous numbers. I hadn't seen the more recent ones.
Yeah, but again, this is just kind of statewide numbers and not necessarily giving us the idea of where things might still be outstanding.
True.
The AP right now also has Donald Trump at 178 electoral votes and Kamala Harris at 99 as we go through and continue to keep counting these.
And again, no big shockers here. I mean,
yeah,
looking at the map, the Dakotas called for Trump, Wyoming, Nebraska,
Mississippi, Alabama,
Oklahoma,
I mean, of course.
Arkansas, Texas. I mean, most of the former Confederate states.
Yeah, Vermont,
Indiana.
Meanwhile, Vermont and New York and so forth going for Harris, that's hardly that's not exactly a surprise. So,
Not at all.
Yeah, so things do seem to be kind of going according to form, I suppose, especially if it's going to be as close and hotly contested as all of the polling basically has indicated here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that sense, the polls have been correct. They predict most of the reputable polls showed both candidates as a statistical dead heat, regardless of which one had a higher percentage of the possible vote. So, that's why it's so, it's like you said, it's so close.
And I don't think, in fact, I'm not sure that I saw any really reputable polls wandering too far outside the margin of error. Like a good poll give you a good 3 points, margin of error.
Standard,
and I mean, really, really close and really, most all of them right within that window. All right, we got a quick update now on the Cameron County Sheriff's race. We want to take a quick look at that one. And this is for the 0% in, so that looks like it's just the early voting numbers right there. But again, 16% going for Manny Trevino, who again defeated Eric Garza in the Democratic runoff. And we've got update on the U.S. Senate race, I believe. And we got 61% in, and Cruz is still maintaining that 6-point edge, which does surprise me a little bit. That is outside of a lot of the polls that I had seen.